Underdog Fantasy is the fastest growing fantasy app and easiest place to play fantasy sports. Just jump on UnderdogFantasy.com or download the app, draft your team, and that's it. And if drafts aren't your thing, they also have a pick'em game where you can win 20 times your money in a single night. Use promo code RADIO, and Underdog will double your first deposit when you sign up with up to $100 in bonus cash. Deposit $100, get $100 free. That's promo code RADIO. Terms and conditions apply.
This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
So we have a bit of a bare bones show for you folks this week. We've got no music and only one piece of listener mail, unfortunately. So this will be a short one, but it's a good one. And what we have will be coming up in a minute.
Jungle Boy and JF, Sammy Guevara and Darby Allin, all elite, highly esteemed. Wrestling's back on the Turner Network. Whether you're tough or radical, or a thing that is your idol, we got the DMV and CM and more on your AW podcast.
So welcome in, wrestling fans, and you are listening to The Next Pillar, your AEW podcast, where each and every Monday we give you a blend of balanced entertainment and insight, just inspired by the weekly goings-on in All Elite Wrestling. You can find us online at nextpillaraew.com. We are on social media at nextpillaraew, and you can follow me on Twitter at BlakeOnWax. And if you'd like to support the show, there is information about how to do that in all of those places that I just mentioned. So coming here, recording day after Easter. Usually record, of course, on Sunday. So I know this episode will be a little bit late for you folks. But, you know, it's Easter. I got a little sleepy. Those who have had my aunt's ham realize that you get a little sleepy afterwards. It's got a solid brine on that. Some of us are a little sensitive to sodium, But yeah, coming to you here on a Monday, recording this early Monday morning. And my wife just wanted to mention just that she was not able to finish music for this show this week. And that's because we had a pretty big development in our lives occur, which is just, I believe I mentioned this on air before, we were in the process of founding a piano school, and in particular, her curriculum is all about differentiated instruction for neurodivergent children. So, kids like me with ADHD, or kids with OCD or autism or things of that nature. Her curriculum is just really effective for helping kids like that who sometimes have problems, in traditional music situations. I know I had a really difficult time picking up an instrument because, of course, when you go to a lesson and you can't pick the song that you want to learn, if you're like me and you have ADHD, it can make it hard for you to stick with it. And so I've probably spoken a little bit too much about that whole situation, but we finally have a pretty good lead on a space, and my wife needed to work on some curriculum stuff for that. But she will be back, and was talking to some folks in the Discord, and this idea came up of maybe having my wife each week, in addition to the music, do a little 5-minute check-in, kind of to just offer some outside spousal perspective on all Elite Wrestling, because I think, as one person said, spouses are great for wild ass takes, so why not? So we will be doing that starting next week. We'll have that. We'll have music. In fact, something I did want to mention on air is just that we have roughly half finished this piece about Miro coming back, actually, and were he to now debut on Wednesday or Friday or what have you, that piece would 100% be ruined. So, I'm kind of just sitting back and watching just whether that will happen or not. So yeah, I'm watching Dynamite for great interest. And if you folks see Miro, you can, of course, you have us to thank. So moving on. Pardon the interruption there. It's just a little crying baby. I know many of you out there know how it goes. I was actually thinking about Jon Moxley's promo that he gave just about how he had gone crazy from the sleep deprivation of just involved with taking care of the baby. And let me tell you, I went back and watched that promo, and I feel it. And I actually even think that my baby might currently be the age of the baby that Jon Moxley had when he gave that promo. So something, kind of speaking of recent life events that I haven't talked about on here at all, is just that I'm a butcher by trade, actually. And although I have not been working as one over the past year and a half or so, I've had a extremely boring day job. But recently, in the midst of kind of all this other stuff that's kind of happening at home, we also, I got a really nice offer to go back and be a butcher again. And so that's something I'm really excited. And if you're thinking to yourself, absolutely, I would love to interview the butcher on the show, and maybe that'll be my first wrestler interview. What I would like to happen, though, is to really only have the conversation be focused on the art of butchering. I'd like to get his thoughts on the St. Louis style pork ribs debate, or how fast he can break down a chicken. I think it would be a great conversation. So yeah, I'll have to see if I can make that happen. Also, speaking of food, I wanted to talk to you guys just about HelloFresh. What is HelloFresh? Well, with HelloFresh, you get farm fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. In fact, that's why it's America's #1 meal kit. And so, yeah, something I just wanted to mention is, as a butcher, I can say I've always been pleasantly surprised by the quality of the meat in HelloFresh meal kits. And it's all about convenience with HelloFresh. Not only do the ingredients come pre-portioned, so you're not overbuying or wasting any food, but it's easier than ever to get filling meals on a table in a snap with options like family-friendly or quick and easy recipes. If you may be in the segment of the audience that I will now lose. If you're a vegetarian, just knowing that I'm a butcher, they have vegetarian options as well. HelloFresh also has fit and wholesome recipes for satisfying and nutritious meals that you can feel good about, with 6 recipes per week to choose from, including low-calorie and carb-conscious options. So again, as you've heard here, you just go to HelloFresh.com/VOW16 and use code VOW16, and you can get up to 6 free meals and 3 free gifts. And let me tell you, that's not a Tony Khan announcement, folks. So you get the 16 meals and the free gifts. You don't get Satnam Singh at your door. You get 16 free meals and 3 free gifts. So again, that's HelloFresh.com/VOW16 and use code VOW16 for up to 16 free meals and 3 free gifts. So, of course, made a little bit of a Satnam Singh joke. And again, how often do I say this? This is not a review show. But I did just want to talk about Dynamite a little bit. In that it just really does illustrate the direction that the company is going in right now. That episode of Dynamite. That episode of Dynamite was such a concise conveyance of just everything that is right and wrong about All Elite Wrestling right now we got on that episode of Dynamite. And I'd like to use a little analogy to explain that and kind of flesh that out more, but I'm going to debut a new segment here. I've had a few of you. There's a couple folks in the Discord, and I've had a couple emails kind of poke fun at the fact that on multiple episodes here, I've used this great analogy of, oftentimes the creative direction, the booking in AEW feels a little bit like Tony Khan having us over for dinner, and maybe we can see, and maybe it's apparent that he may have been spending a little bit more time and attention on some of the offerings more than the other offerings. And so in a new segment that I'm going to call the Analogy Retirement Ceremony, I will officially retire the Tony Khan cooking dinner analogy for, to explain the creative direction of AEW. And it's going to go out with a bang here because last Wednesday, it was again, it was like Tony Khan inviting us over for Thanksgiving dinner. And what did he have? Well, he had quite a spread, and he let us know in the invites that, talking was going to be at a minimum. And that's fine. Sometimes it's nice to have a dinner, where instead of focusing on the conversation, we focus on the meal. And what did Tony serve us? Well, I mean, of course, the best part of it was, it got bought a nice heritage bird. It was everything you'd want from the food of a Thanksgiving meal. Maybe it was a little bit light on, maybe you could have used a little bit more conversation. Maybe it would have been nice if he had made a little bit of like a festive punch. Maybe instead of, just like a little carafe of water, he could have put in a little bit of lemon and cucumber. But these are small complaints. We were all prepared to be in the car on the way home from Tony's house talking to our wife about what a wonderful meal we had. And instead, we had to have a conversation talking with her wife, and maybe she asked us if we had drank enough water that day, or maybe she asked us if we needed to go to bed early, because that's exactly what it was like. Because let me tell you, it was at the end of the meal, Tony brought out just an amazing pumpkin pie, and he went through it step by step. He's like, guys, this pumpkin pie is the shit. I even made a nice little streusel topping. Almost looks like a crumble on top of that thing. This is not your garden variety pumpkin pie that you get at a Kroger. This is quite a pumpkin pie. And so I'm excited for this pumpkin pie, obviously. And I'm waiting with bated breath for this pumpkin pie, and I'm enjoying the pumpkin pie. But then, what do you hear? You hear a little plastic container snap open. You're like, what's that? And then Tony Khan starts talking about how maybe his parents ate some pretty weird stuff when he was a kid. Maybe he talks a little bit about Miracle Whip. Did you guys have to eat that when you were a kid? And it gets you thinking. You're like, oh no. There's not Cool Whip in that plastic container, is there? Is there? Well, there was. Tony gave us a big dollop of Cool Whip. Ruined that pumpkin pie at the end of that meal. And let's be clear here. The Cool Whip is this Jay Lethal angle. I mean, is anyone interested in this Jay Lethal angle? I will say I am interested from one perspective, and that perspective is just that Jay Lethal, with this heel character, is giving off an astonishing amount of disappointed, mad youth pastor energy. And those of you who grew up in a church, you know what I'm talking about. Your youth pastor, you never could take him seriously because you knew you would never actually get in trouble with your youth pastor, now would you? You could think of the worst thing imaginable, and your youth pastor is just going to look at you and be like, Blake, are you glorifying God with those actions? God, I heard that a lot. And that's the thing with Jay Lethal. He has mad, disappointed, angry youth pastor energy. In fact, I would even go so far as to suggest that putting your middle finger in a box and opening it, that's about as bad youth pastor as it gets, or youth pastor trying to be edgy as it gets. Like, that's like, if you had a youth pastor at his breaking point, like, he's not going to beat somebody up or something like that. He's going to put his middle finger in a box and open it. But I digress. That episode of Dynamite was fantastic up until the very end, and I know a lot of other people have talked about this as well. And on some level, you do have to appreciate, just as a fan myself, you know, of Ring of Honor, and I've talked about on this podcast just how much I would love to have Ring of Honor be a consistent second AEW brand, maybe one that focuses a little bit more on the in-ring product, and one that maintains all the current like titles and rules of Ring of Honor. I think it would be wonderful for the wrestling business if that happened. And so on some level, you know, I do appreciate just that they devoted the main event of Dynamite to this Samoa Joe, Jay Lethal, and now Satnam Singh angle. So on one hand, you do appreciate the attention that they are showing Ring of Honor, just because at least kind of what I see in the tea leaves is it does seem like Samoa Joe will be, you know, viewed as like essentially a Ring of Honor guy, equal or maybe even more so to being an AEW guy. So on that level, you know, I do appreciate it. But yeah, you know, I can't think of a better Dynamite to illustrate, again, just the highs and lows of where the company is at right now. And I'll get to that a little bit later here in the show. But first, I did want to get to listener mail. And I mentioned this earlier, but we only had one email this week. And, look, I get it. I mean, I took a couple weeks off. You know, I moved the time slot. And I knew it would be a while before folks adjusted. And we've had this happen before. I think, there was a show where I only had one, and then the next week we had a ton. But from Ida, who has emailed the show 3 times, so shout out to Ida. What do you think about Tony Nese these days? I've found him mostly boring outside of some Dragon Gate work that he's done, and wasn't thrilled to have him in AEW at all, but the match with Swerve Strickland and now this new Mark Sterling partnership have me wondering if maybe Tony Nese is going to be a thing. So thanks for that, Ida. And I'm glad they've decided to actually do something with Tony Nese to set him apart from some of these other kind of similarly sized 205 Live guys. The Smart Mark thing, I think, is it's interesting. You know, I'm wondering, maybe if some of the other managers, who are no longer with the company, I wonder, like a Tully Blanchard or an Arn Anderson. I'm wondering if maybe them not being on TV now is more of a thing to maybe get more time for a Smart Mark Sterling. So that's an interesting idea to think about. I do think, I'm glad that they're, again, that they're doing something different with Tony Nese, pairing him with Smart Mark Sterling. I also like that, at least right now, it appears that Smart Mark Sterling is kind of like a Paul Heyman figure, in that you can be managed by Mark Sterling, but not necessarily have to relate to the other clients that he has, or kind of be included in angles with them. Like, I will turn on this Smart Mark Sterling thing pretty quick if like the Jade Cargill segment now has like Tony Nese standing in the background. No one wants to see that. So I've enjoyed the way that they've done this Smart Mark Sterling stuff, where he has this side business with MJF, he has Jade Cargill, and now he has Tony Nese. I think that's cool, especially having a client in the women's division and in the men's division. And again, I talk about this a lot, just the lack of consistent week-to-week storytelling. And speaking of Smart Mark Sterling and MJF, like, what is going on with the Pinnacle right now? I understand they're in a bit of a tricky situation with like plotting what's next with MJF, while also having to navigate this recent FTR face turn. And Tully Blanchard now, just being in Ring of Honor, it appears. So we knew there'd be some changes to navigate there. But what happened to the Pinnacle, you know? And again, you know, I've said this before, but it's like when, you know, virtually you have stables like Team Taz and now the Black Bull Combat Club, where it's like literally everything they touches turns to gold. It just kind of makes some of these other stables seem a lot more worse, kind of just by comparison, you know? Like, I don't think they've necessarily done anything wrong with Best Friends or the Dark Order, but you can just tell, you know, the difference between a Team Taz, where you know that every segment is going to be gold, and again, a Best Friends or a Dark Order, or, you know, I just feel like it might be a good opportunity for them to kind of just do a bit of a restart with some of these mid-card acts who I think at this point fans are going to stop caring about if they haven't already, just because, again, they know, like, oh, this person is in Best Friends or this person's in Dark Order, this isn't one of the like important stables, because fans, I think, are more savvy than folks give them credit for in terms of their ability to tell which things in AEW are things that Tony Khan is invested in and which things Tony Khan maybe doesn't care as much about, and I'll flesh that out a little bit more later. So yeah, I will be back in a bit here, just with some further thoughts that I had about last week's AEW programming. But before then, again, my wife was not able to do any music for the show, but did want to share something with you folks. Last week, I played a song that was just my wife's old band, was a song of hers, because she wasn't able to do music a few weeks ago. And a lot of you folks actually seem to really enjoy just kind of hearing a random song on here. I do know that just, you know, listening to one person talk for an hour can get a little grating at times. So yeah, you know, even when my wife isn't able to cook something up, I do want to bring some levity to the show. So I hope you enjoy this tune. It's from a band called Alkapops.
See the morning come. Don't wanna see the rising sun.
And we are back. Again, that was a song called Move Me from a band called Alkapops. Incredible songwriting from Leland Brell, who I worked with when he was in a band called Mr. Bones. And if you can find that self-titled tape out there in the wild, or find it on Spotify, you should give it a listen. Because again, it's incredible songwriting. If you've ever wanted to know what it sounds like, to have Stephen Merritt front Guided by Voices, that's the songs of Leland Brell. So what a weird show Battle of the Belts, or I guess I should say Battle of the Belts 2 was. And for me, it really was like kind of the end of a pretty unsatisfying batch of AEW programming that we got this week. I think the divide is becoming pretty stark between the product that AEW is putting out in the ring and the product that AEW is putting out with its storytelling. And I think that this week that contrast has never been more stark. Battle of the Belts began with the continued bungling of Sammy Guevara, who, as a lot of you know, is like overall, probably my favorite pillar, or at least I guess the one that I kind of that I'm rooting for the most, I guess you could say. And my wife is going to be on the show next week. Her little 5-minute thing is going to be in defense of Sammy and Ty Conti. And I'm not going to go that far out on a branch. I think I talked about last week, just I don't really understand the degree of animosity coming from the fans towards Sammy and Ty, because I'm kind of one of those guys where I kind of think they're a cute couple, and I kind of like seeing the two of them together on screen. And again, I know some of you may be like, well, that may say more about you and your wife than it says about Sammy and Ty Conti or the fans, Blake. And the situation with the picture of them in the TNT title, that is absolutely something that my wife and I would do, and I'm not ashamed of that. But I do understand that obviously if the fans are booing this, and every other wrestling writer, podcaster, whatever that I respect is also taking a shit on this angle, I know that I'm the one that's wrong, and that it's not some failing of folks to understand the appeal of Ty Conti and Sammy Guevara together. What I can say is that the way that they have booked the TNT title over the past couple months, and again, we don't know how much of that was a byproduct of that Cody Rhodes contract situation and what him and Tony may have been working out during those negotiations that were breaking down. But yeah, this TNT title booking and also this American Top Team angle should be just red hot, even though I think it's safe to say the Scorpio Sky thing was a failure. I was more than willing to give it some more time, just because, again, that one of those last vignettes he did on Rampage with the snapping, it's like, I can see the potential there. I can see, what the supporters of Scorpio Sky, within AEW can see. I can see the potential as well, but I think it's safe to say, again, Scorpio Sky as TNT champion has not turned any heads, unfortunately. And a lot of that is no fault of Scorpio Sky himself. It is again, lack of consistent week-to-week storytelling with Scorpio Sky in this division. And a lot of it, again, may have to do with, contract negotiations with Cody Rhodes and things like that, in terms of why the past 6 months have not been kind to the TNT title, which is partly, beyond just loving Miro, why we tried to work up a song, begging, please, Miro, come back. Not just because we like Miro here, we also, we're huge fans of his TNT title run. And again, looking back at last week's Dynamite, my big takeaway from it is just how illustrative it was of the pros and cons of AEW over the last couple months, where we have these amazing matches, largely on the men's side of things, which I'll get into later. That's not a fault of the talent, that's a fault of the booking. But yeah, it's like, obviously, I loved watching the wrestling that happened this week. Many of you folks know that I've spent a lot of the past year hoping that Samoa Joe would come back and have matches exactly like the one that we got. But at some point, it's like, yes, the wrestling is always great. And at the end of the day, we usually watch a show, and even if the creative is, not as consistent as it should be, I still might find myself walking away, from each episode of Dynamite, each pay-per-view, each Rampage, largely satisfied. As these creative issues continue, though, and I see them making the same mistakes over and over again, especially in the women's division, it begins to bleed into the enjoyment of the show. And I think that that's not just something that I experience because I host a wrestling podcast. I think it's something that fans experience too. And I think that fans can tell. Again, fans are sometimes smarter than folks give them credit for. I think the fans can tell, this is the stuff that Tony Khan, maybe they can't even put the words to it, but they can tell that, this is the stuff that the person in charge is paying attention to. And this is the stuff that the person in charge does not give a shit about. And I think that comes across on AEW programming each and every week. And I think that that's something that maybe if they don't acknowledge it, maybe they may not have that exact thought. I do think that on a subconscious level, and it's the same in WWE, where you see fans, they realize like, oh, the WWE doesn't care about this person, so I don't have to either. And I think that AEW is in a danger zone here with their creative, because I think they are creating that same vacuum with a lot of this, again, lack of consistent storytelling on a weekly basis. And if you listen to Tony Khan speak, there's a couple things that have me feeling pretty worried about the AEW creative situation, I guess. At that Super Card of Honor show, which again was a fantastic pay-per-view, he was asked at the media scrum just about, are you going to have someone help your creative direction now that you have this, potential second brand of programming to book? And Tony's response essentially, was to, point finger guns after you make a field goal at the YMCA. You know what I mean? It was, he basically said something to the effect of, well, I thought tonight's show went pretty great, so I'm not really worried about it. Where it's like, I'm sorry, dude. There's a big difference between booking a successful Ring of Honor pay-per-view and, again, booking a wrestling program on a weekly basis, and now in fact booking 2 or possibly 3 or 4 on a weekly basis. And the other thing that has come out over the past few weeks that has really concerned me is just his comments. Let's see, I believe it was on Busted Open Radio, but I could be wrong, where folks asked him what was the deal with that Satnam Singh thing. And again, I'm not a review show. I'm not going to be the 5th podcast that you guys listen to that talks about that Satnam Singh thing for too long. But Tony's response was, well, it wasn't my idea, but there was someone with 30 years of production experience that gave it a green light. Number one, Tony, I think it's really important that you don't pass the buck like that, because immediately my mind goes to, why is someone with 30 years of television experience still so bad with creative stuff that they think that is the proper way to debut as Satnam Singh? And it does make me worry just how often this is now happening, where if someone with, quotes, experience pitches a story idea or an angle or the ending of a massive show, this Dynamite was a massive Dynamite. And AEW, I think, really needed to have a great start to finish episode of Dynamite. And this was even kind of billed as like hey, we're getting back to wrestling with this show, so there's not going to be very much talk, it's only going to be wrestling. And then you end it with this like cartoonishly bad debut of Satnam Singh. And again, it has me worried, where how often is this going to happen, where if no one in a production meeting, I guess, voices, hey, maybe this is a bad way to debut this person, then it gets on TV. Because Tony, you had to have known that was going to be a disaster. I guess maybe I put too much faith in Tony Khan. That's certainly something that a friend of mine who used to do a wrestling podcast suggested to me. But watching some of the storytelling that Tony Khan has done, I know that he probably knew that was not the best way to end the show. I do think that he probably, as his wont to do, or as he is wont to do, I should say, I think he probably may have underestimated just how negative the reaction to that ending angle would be. But still, I know that deep down, he knew that wasn't a great angle to put on TV. And it worries me because the situation that this reminds me of is, when I'm finished with a show and I've sent it to Rich and I pop an edible and my wife asks me how was that show, and I'm like, oh, it was great fucking show. Just one of the best I've done. And then I listen to it the next day and I see that I had a gigantic editing mistake wherein I talked for like the second half of that CM Punk piece that my wife cooked up, which let me just take care of this right now.
Underdog Fantasy is the fastest growing fantasy app and easiest place to play fantasy sports. Just jump on UnderdogFantasy.com or download the app, draft your team, and that's it. And if drafts aren't your thing, they also have a pick'em game where you can win 20 times your money in a single night. Use promo code RADIO, and Underdog will double your first deposit when you sign up with up to $100 in bonus cash. Deposit $100, get $100 free. That's promo code RADIO. Terms and conditions apply.
And again, you know, this may have not come across because I was talking during a lot of the second half of it, but we had a listener write in and suggest that we cook up some 8-bit / chiptune versions of some AEW themes to send to Matthew at Botchamania, which I have not done yet. And so, yeah, I guess I should, since a listener suggested that. But yeah, again, that was a chiptune version of CM Punk's theme. I just wanted to play that again this week since I ended up talking over a lot of it last week. And that's what I'm just a little bit worried about Tony, because he kind of has a dunking when maybe you shouldn't be dunking mentality, it seems, when it comes to this stuff. But yeah, there is a recent issue I have with the storytelling in particular. And look, I know I'm not the only one who complains about this stuff, especially this issue in particular. But I was deeply disappointed by the booking of this Toni Storm Jamie Hayter match for this week's edition of Dynamite already. And I know that some other AEW podcasts had this exact same complaint. But sometimes the fact that, if I agree with people that I don't always agree with, that's also a way that I can know that something's pretty important. And so I wanted to talk a little bit just about why I think that, in particular, the way some things in this tournament have already been handled have me really worried that AEW is going to miss a really good opportunity in this tournament to make up for their bad creative, as they often do, by telling some really good stories in the ring. Like, you look at that, like, what is one of the best storytelling moments in AEW over the past year? It's that the Jon Moxley Wheeler Yuta match. It's the Bryan Danielson Wheeler Yuta angle. It's all these things that are not happening, in a backstage segment, which, again, those seem to just feel more rudderless as things go along. Like, those backstage segments seem less put together, less directed, there's so much less intent in them, and they're so much less effective than what a Jon Moxley or a Bryan Danielson or a CM Punk is able to do in the ring. And there are many wrestlers in the AEW women's division who I know can also tell those kinds of stories, but they have not been given the opportunities to do so. And again, back to this tournament situation, a lot of folks have suggested that, Toni Storm, Jamie Hayter should have been the final of this tournament. And I don't agree with that, actually, but I certainly think it should have been saved a bit later, because now what we have is either Toni Storm is going to miss out on that opportunity, or Jamie Hayter is. And Jamie Hayter is someone who, and again, I'm not the only one complaining about this stuff, but this is someone that this company has underutilized for the better part of a year now. She's been in this angle, I guess, with Britt Baker for much longer than fans have really wanted to see go on. And I do think, actually, that, like, the best case scenario of what I think we all assume is going to happen, which is, Toni Storm beating Jamie Hayter and going on in this tournament, I think maybe the best case scenario of that is they finally pull the trigger on, a Britt Baker, Jamie Hayter feud. And I do think that even though the creative has kind of wound that down to a point where people are kind of going to stop caring about it, I do think that Jamie Hayter and Britt Baker are people that the fans care enough about and are talented enough to where they can heat that back up. and it could be a pretty compelling feud. So hopefully, that's kind of the best case scenario of what, you're looking at as a Jamie Hayter fan. Or maybe, maybe I'm wrong and they have Jamie Hayter go over, as we've seen. I was very pleasantly surprised that Powerhouse Hobbs got that win over Keith Lee. Swerve Strickland's lost too. You see Tony has a willingness to bring Ruby Soho, to bring folks in from WWE, and have them lose pretty soon to the folks that he's invested in. And so maybe I'm wrong with my reading of this situation. Maybe Jamie Hayter will win. But you also have to wonder, again, it's like if Jamie Hayter wins, then I'm bummed that Toni Storm isn't in more of this tournament. Because unfortunately, that Red Velvet win, I know a lot of folks like her work in the ring, but, for me, Red Velvet has had storylines. Red Velvet has had opportunities. Red Velvet has really not gotten over. And you have someone like Willow Nightingale, who I was really excited to go, hopefully deep into this tournament. And again, instead we have Red Velvet in this tournament. And that's really the issue with the women's division. I misspoke on here a few weeks ago saying that a lot of the issues with the women's division is a matter of recruitment. And someone, had a good question in the Discord about, who do you feel like they're missing out on? And it's like, when you sit and think about it, it's not so much that they're not recruiting the right people, it's that they're not using the right people after they recruit them, or at least that's one of my criticisms about the division. Again, the big thing is just we can tell, some in some ways pretty literally, but at the very least, I think fans already are starting to tell on a subconscious level that Tony Khan just does not have the same passion for booking a women's division on a consistent weekly basis as he does, for some of the other booking stuff that he does for the company. There is no reason that, I'm not saying that, everyone should get the Jade Cargill push, but I absolutely think that every wrestler in the women's division should get that level of attention that AEW Creative has shown to Jade Cargill. And yeah, just very disappointed at how this Owen tournament is being booked on the women's side so far. And I know, yeah, it's pretty, we haven't even had all the qualifying matches yet. I know it's pretty, I'm kind of maybe jumping the gun already complaining about the booking of this. But again, when you've been watching the way that AEW has handled the women's division over the past year, it's really hard to have a lot of faith that they're going to be able to make this tournament everything that it could be for the women's division. Again, I was just thinking, talking about Super Card of Honor again, I remember watching, that Martinez Willow Nightingale match and thinking, like, why hasn't this match happened on AEW TV? Why don't they have matches like this? Or a match like we've seen with, they'll carve out these pretty significant parts of time for, CM Punk to have a long match, or Darby Allin and Andrade to have a long match. And I'm not saying they don't do that on occasion, but at some point you have to wonder why the Hikaru Shida Serena Deeb feud feels novel, because the attention that they've shown that feud should be the attention that they show every feud in the women's division. And I can't help but think about the future, or at least the apparent future of, the men's title, where it looks like they're building to, a Punk Hangman feud, where there's really no doubt in my mind that CM Punk fighting Hangman Page and having a feud with Hangman Page is going to be one of the greatest feuds of AEW, both because of the talent of everyone involved, particularly CM Punk, who, again, I said, like, if they do this MJF feud right, he's going to feel like CM Punk again. He's going to be reinvigorated. And what we've seen is that even when CM Punk, like right now, isn't really in a program with anyone, he is making absolutely killer television on a weekly basis, even by fighting someone like Dax Hardwood. Like, that feels vital now, where it's like, how many of those early CM Punk matches, like the one with Matt Sydal or what have you, do you even remember? But I think a lot of us will remember that match with Penta or the match with Dax Hardwood. I think a lot of us will remember those matches, and it's because CM Punk feels revitalized by this feud. And the idea to see him go against Hangman Page, who I know some of you have criticized I don't talk about Hangman Page enough, particularly relative to Adam Cole. But Adam Page is kind of one of those guys where he's like the most solid guy in your friend group. How often do you find yourself worrying about the most solid guy in your friend group? You don't, because you have less solid friends to worry about. But you need a ride to the airport, you need someone to go to a Blazer game with, you call your most solid friend, and Hangman is an incredible talent. I absolutely feel like he's deserving of the world title. I do think, though, again, it kind of seems like Tony Khan had a pretty, ambitious plan with this Hangman Page Omega storyline that, again, is a highlight in AEW history and always will be. But where is the Hangman Page Kenny Omega story in the women's division? Because there are so many stories like that could be told and should be told. But will they be told? I mean, only if Tony has the commitment to do so. And so, yeah, it's like, even as a massive fan of CM Punk and, a really big fan of Hangman Page, it's like, yeah, of course I'm excited to see that title feud. But it's kind of like, in the back of my mind, I think about it where it's like, oh, this is like another tremendous piece of storytelling in the men's division. Like, when is the women's division going to get these kind of compelling stories that we know that AEW is capable of telling? And that attention, that commitment from Tony Khan himself is ultimately the thing that is always going to hold the women's division back. Because when you have one person in charge of creative, it becomes very clear which things Tony Khan is excited about and which things are like, I don't know, what Thunder Rosa has been up to since winning the women's title. I can't believe they actually did a cake angle for that. Like, that's like the stereotypical, like, well, the WWE obviously doesn't care about this person angle. They actually did a cake angle. And so, yeah, AEW is a wonderful product on a weekly basis when it comes to the in-ring product and even the in-ring storytelling that happens. But when it comes to the creative side of things, more and more AEW is that divide again between the things that Tony Khan pays attention to and the things that he doesn't. That divide has never felt more stark than it does right now on the creative side of things. And so Tony Khan, that's right, Tony Khan. My words of wisdom for you this week are just consistency is key. We've seen that in so many places, Tony, when it comes to the wrestling business. But let's talk about life. Consistency is key. Again, you never worry about the most solid guy in your friend group. What's up, Colby? But maybe you should. And maybe if you were a little bit more consistent in how you relate to your friend group, maybe you'd realize that some of the people that you may have thought aren't so solid are actually the most solid. Maybe you'd find, maybe you should consider, have you ever done a bullet journal? This is very helpful for a lot of people. It's really nice, you can make it out of any notebook. There's really easy to understand directions online about it. It's helped me immensely, Tony. And yeah, we just want to see some powerful storytelling, some innovative storytelling in our AEW Women's Division. And with that, I'll see you next week, guys. Thank you.
for a mission-critical announcement.
Frank LaRose is on a mission. He's on a mission to secure Ohio's elections and protect the integrity of your vote. Accomplishing the mission is what Frank LaRose does. On the battlefield in Iraq and Kosovo, he earned a Bronze Star as a Green Beret. On his mission to secure our elections, Frank LaRose made Ohio's voter ID laws some of the toughest in the country. He banned unsecured drop boxes, made sure only legal citizens can vote, and removed thousands of deceased voters and duplicate records from the rolls. With fraud, foreign interference, and Nancy Pelosi's Washington overreach threatening our state's election integrity, Ohio needs Frank LaRose. Secure our elections. Protect your vote. That's the mission, and Frank LaRose will get it done as Secretary of State.
This has been a mission-critical announcement.
Paid for by Americans for a Secure Elections PAC, not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee.